Welcome back, everybody. It is the World Series edition of MLB Live Before Lock from Awesemo.com. I'm Jake Hari, joined by my partner in crime, Terry McBride. Team MlB, what's up, man? You ready for this World Series to start? We're finally here.
Yeah, man. It's finally it flew by, but it was some good baseball along the way and fun playoffs so far. I really enjoyed it. So I didn't think I was going to love the big expanded playoff format, but it's been a fun ride outside of my Yankees not making it to the series. So looking forward to this one. Hopefully it'll be a nice long 7-gamer.
Yeah, I hope so. I wouldn't mind a few more MLB games to watch here and play some DFS on. You talk about the extended playoffs, do you think that's going to stick around? I have to feel like it's going to, once they can put fans in the seats and just have another, extra couple games of revenue, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I don't think they'll go to the full 16 like this, but I'd be surprised if they didn't extend it by an additional, couple teams on either side to add that one extra round, maybe do a single elimination type game for, additional wild cards, something like that. So now that they saw the model, I doubt they'll take it off the table. Similar with like the DH. I don't think the universal DH is going to go away. I do hope that the stupid extra innings rules with starting a runner on second base goes away. I hate that, but universal DH I can get behind.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's been, all things considered, the way the season started, it looked like we might not have a season after that first weekend or so. And now we're here. Now we're in the World Series. We've got two really awesome teams, and we've got some DFS to play. There's a couple 100Ks tonight, one on DK, one on FanDuel. We're going to talk about some No House Advantage. They are the sponsor of the show. And then we've got a bunch of free stuff. So we'll start out just mentioning off the top. First of all, you usually ask you guys for likes. And I see there's already 250 of you in here. If you guys, again, drop us a like. Yeah, that's awesome. But now we're going to ask if you could please subscribe to the channel so that when we're always going live. You wouldn't want to miss out on one of these shows. Feels like you guys like what we're doing. So no real downside to subscribing. You can see when the NBA shows go live, when that's going on, NFL. Obviously, we've got some of the best NFL content in the industry, and then every other sport as well. So thank you guys. The subscribes would be really helpful to Terry and I and everyone on the site, so we can continue to offer free content. Other free stuff, Showdown ownership projections. So if you guys have not tried these out yet, let me link these in the chat if someone hasn't already. Let me pull these up right here. Single game Showdown ownership projections. So Terry and I can refer to the actual numbers today, since this is unlocked. This isn't just for premium members, but you can see the captain, the projected captain ownership, as well as the utility ownership for all these guys, including some of the relievers. So on this one game slate, we're going to have to kind of dive into everything, every possible player that could see a plate appearance. Well, maybe not pinch hitters, but I'm sure some people will do that. But especially these relievers, we've seen relievers end up in the winning lineups. Even though they don't get extra points anymore on DraftKings, we do see relievers end up in the banking lineup every once in a while. So just off the top here, Terry, do you have any specific strategies you want to talk about for Showdown for either site?
So I think for FanDuel, it's something of a crapshoot. You don't have to worry about pitchers. You do get the multiplier spots, but it's really just some plug and play, especially with baseball. I mean, with basketball, you can kind of expect who's going to go into those multiplier spots with pretty reliable accuracy. For the finals, for example, we knew that it was going to be some combination of Butler, Davis, and LeBron in those top couple spots with the multipliers. In baseball, you can kind of drill it down to the guys most likely to succeed, but those are going to be the most popular guys, and it's baseball. So they're going to have a very high probability of not succeeding. So it makes a lot of sense. And that's why I love that tool you were just talking about. That's how I usually play Showdown, is just pull that up. And I start building lineups with uncommon captains. I start that way. And then I like to get into when I do build with common captains, with chalky captains, and this is for both sites. That's when I like to mix up with my flex ownership and start looking at, correlated bats that make sense through the lineup, but maybe are not the most popular plays, and try and get different with my lineups that way when I'm playing with chalky captains. I think it makes a ton of sense, obviously, to look to Kershaw in the captain spot on DK tonight. With just he's going to have he's the most likely guy to put up a monster point total for you tonight. The strikeouts are going to be there. He's a dominant strikeout pitcher. The Rays led baseball in strikeouts against lefties this season, which we'll get into. So I really think that he makes a ton of sense there. And then you mentioned it, you could start playing around with, I don't really like to try and pick off pinch hitters, but you could do it. It's a lot of guesswork that goes into it. You got to, think about the most likely guys to come off the bench, what the scenario is going to be. Try and tell the story of the game in your mind as you're building that lineup, and don't play the guy who's going to get pinch hit for by that guy necessarily. That might not be your best approach, because that guy might be on the good side of his platoon splits going through the game, like a Hunter Renfroe, for example. Right. One of my more likely Rays to hit a home run off of Clayton Kershaw, but very likely to get pinch hit for later in the game. Doesn't necessarily mean you would want him and the pinch hitter. So it's interesting to play it that way. And then getting into the bullpens, of course, I think you hit that on the head. There's going to be some relevant bullpen arms. It's tough to guess who they're going to be, especially in game one.
Yeah, so the good part about being a premium member as well, and obviously me and Terry have access to these kind of things, is that Alex is doing some of the work for you guys in terms of projecting relievers. So right now we've got 4 guys that are projected in the Awesemo.com Showdown projections. Again, ownership projections are free, so you guys have access to those. You can see who those guys are. But if you want to see the point totals, you're going to have to get behind the paywall, maybe get a weekly pass for this last week. I'm not really big into targeting any pinch hitters here, but I just wanted to make sure we kind of touch on everything and anticipate some of these questions we're going to get. If you guys have any interesting talking points in the chat, we've got 40 minutes or so to fill until this game starts. So if you guys got any questions or anything you guys want us to talk about, feel free to drop that in chat. Side note, Terry, did you see Emac's performance yesterday on the Showdown Live Before Lock show?
Oh, no, I did.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, Emac just absolutely took it like a champ. Had a little slippage there in terms of word choice. He's in the chat, so some people poking some fun at him. We love Emac, but that was one of the funnier moments I think we've had on stream. So just wanted to call that out in chat. I see you guys. I'm laughing here. Laughing with Emac, obviously, not laughing at him.
We got to give that one life and keep it going, because he told me a couple days ago that he was looking for a new catchphrase to catch fire in the industry and like really spread around. So I think that's what he's going for. I think that's the one that he wants, guys. So if you can spread that around as much as possible out there, I think he wants to put his name on it and stick with it.
That's right. Emac diverting attention away from himself, asking about your hat. I see you got some Awesemo swag there.
Indeed. Yeah, this is it's been, I don't know why I haven't put it on for any of the streams up until now. It's just been kind of up on a hook. I don't leave the house all that often, so I'm not changing up a lot of things, so maybe that's why. But I saw it sitting there today. I said, oh, geez, I got to throw that on. It's a nice, solid hat. I know we've got someone like the farmer's back, trucker back hats too. This one's a solid back. Really, that's more my style, but we got a lot of swag out there. I've seen a lot of nice stuff. You were talking about how comfy the shirts are, so yeah, some good stuff out there.
Yeah, I love the shirts and the sweatshirts. We've got those. I think you guys can probably see them if you kind of scroll past the description on your YouTube page if you are interested in that. So I'm not going to sell you a bunch of stuff, but I like them, and I think they look cool. Nice Awesemo logo on there. We're going to get into the game very shortly, but quick want to mention No House Advantage. They are the sponsor of this show, MLB Live Before Lock. It's a really interesting game if you guys haven't checked it out just yet. No House Advantage, you're basically picking props and putting confidence points behind them. So it's kind of like a confidence pool if you've ever done that for like college football or NFL, picking games against the spread, or some have them for just money lines. But No House Advantage is great. And if you use promo code Awesemo, you can get up to $20 on your first deposit. So some of the props they have for tonight, I just clicked on a contest. And by the way, this contest is not even close to filling. Let's see, 63 out of 220 right now. That is 29% full. And I just refreshed and it's still that. So this is not even 30% full. There's probably going to be some overlay in this this $10 entry. So some of the props you can get for tonight. I like going to the pitchers usually. Looks like there's one for Kershaw, 5.5 strikeouts for Clayton Kershaw. I would probably put that up near the top in terms of like 5 or 6 confidence points there, just because if you go to OddsShopper, oddshopper.awesemo.com, Kershaw's prop is actually 6.5, and there's a lot of juice going to the over. So I think you're getting some pretty good value on 5.5 strikeouts. What say you, Terry?
Yeah, I actually wrote up the Kershaw over at, I think it was BetMGM had a good line on it going off of OddsShopper. I wrote a little best props of the day piece that I'm going to do through the World Series using OddsShopper, and providing a couple home runs off of my home run model, and then I threw in the Kershaw strikeout. I mentioned the Rays led baseball. It was a 28.1 I think percent strikeout rate. I've got it, but I'll pull it up in a minute. Led baseball in strikeouts against lefties. Kershaw's an excellent strikeout option against both sides, so I really like that, especially with one taken off the top of it over at No House Advantage. That's a great. I would hammer that with the heaviest possible confidence.
Yeah. So 6 points would be the most confidence you can have in that one. There's also some interesting ones for hitters as well. You got 1.5 hits and RBIs for a guy like Justin Turner, guy who's going to bat in the middle of the order. With the stacked team, I like that one as well. And there's quite a bit more. So go check those out for yourself. Again, use promo code Awesemo to get $20 on your first deposit, up to $20 on your first deposit on No House Advantage. Pretty cool site. They're doing DFS a little bit differently. So I like it. I've played NFL over there quite a bit, and going to have to pop a few in there tonight because, again, we're going to have some overlay in this $10 tournament. Let's talk about the game, just like we would if it was a strategy show. I know Josh and Adam did a really good show earlier. I'm not necessarily talking about the game specifically, but they did talk about some strategy. So if you guys want to go watch that back after this show's done, if you're looking to play Showdown for the next, hopefully, 6 or 7 games, they had a really interesting discussion just about ownership and just general strategy. So Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers, 3.4 implied total for the Rays, 4.2 for the Dodgers. It's Glass now and Kershaw. Where do you fall on the Kershaw's not good in the playoffs thing? Is this just a complete fluke? Do you think it's a mental thing with him? It's not that big of a sample, but where do you stand on that? And then talk about anything you'd like in this game.
Yeah, I come down more on the numbers side analytically with baseball in general. There's no such thing as clutch. His numbers don't know that it's the playoffs. It's just happenstance. It's just a few games here and there. Yeah, in an unquantifiable sense, maybe he puts too much pressure on himself. Maybe this, maybe that. Maybe the ball is too slippery in his hand because his palms are sweaty in the playoffs. I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. The best we can say is that it's most likely happenstance. And he's Clayton Kershaw. Again, the numbers do not know that it's the playoffs. The numbers are going to be what they are. He's in a great spot, a great strikeout matchup. The Rays get a good amount of power against lefties. They were 4th in baseball this year with a 217 ISO, 124 WRC plus. But I mentioned 28.1% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. I think that's what it's really all about today. And for the props piece, I just went through the various hitters in the starting lineup just to pull some of the strikeout rates against lefties. You've got a few guys who are, kind of temperate, like a Yandy Diaz, only 15.6% this year, 18.2% career. But some of their key hitters are just atrocious as far as strikeouts against lefties. Brandon Lowy, 23.3% this year, 37.7% career. Hunter Renfroe, 27.5% this year, 21% career. Willie Adames, 32.1% this year, 30.2% career. Zunino, 44% this year, 33.6% career. There are a ton of strikeouts for a lefty pitcher in this lineup. So ride the Kershaw side of things. He is the most likely guy to put up an explosive amount of points tonight.
Yeah, Kershaw right now. So I'm playing 20 lineups. I think you're only playing a handful, you said before the show. And Kershaw's my highest exposed guy. So pretty flat ownership across the board. I don't know if this is necessarily how everyone else should do it, but if you are using an optimizer, if you're using Fantasy Cruncher, you can make rules. I made a rule so that I have to have at least one pitcher in all of my lineups. Maybe they could both get pulled in the 3rd inning and we have a 9-8 game or something like that. And by pitcher, I mean starting one of the starters, so Kershaw or Glass now, because we do have some relievers in play, as we talked about earlier. And so I've got 55% Kershaw and actually 60% Kershaw. I've got one Kershaw captain lineup, and then the rest is with Glass now. So I wouldn't say it's smart to fade both pitchers. William asks, is it smart to fade both pitchers? I would say no. It's probably going to be different, but again, if you are using an optimizer, you're probably going to get at least one pitcher in your lineups. Anyways, I like the build with just one and not two, because then you're really, really limiting yourself. And then you're going to end up on all these super chalky, kind of not great hitters. The guys like Diaz. I mean, Kiermaier's okay. Jock's obviously okay. He's a home run threat. But you could end up with one of the more heavily duped lineups if you are playing Kershaw and Glasnow in the same lineup. So do you have would you expect to have a lot of lineups with both of those guys if you were playing, 20 or more lineups?
No, not with both. I would typically try and I like for showdowns especially, I like the notion of try and tell a story with your lineups, especially if you're only building 20. If you're building 150, it gets difficult to, really sit there and do that with 150 individual lineups. But I like that notion of just, make sure that it makes sense, follow a specific narrative of what could happen in the game, what's most likely to happen in the game. And both of these guys putting up monster games, it's in play, but then like you said, you're following a very, very specific path of where your lineup's going to go. And it's really going to go down to just some of these cheap hitters, and you're going to be on the same combination of cheap hitters, and there's no way to get different. So now you have to nail both pitchers being excellent. You have to get the exact right bats, and you're still going to end up hoping at best to be chopping it 5-10 different ways if you do win. So it's definitely not my preferred approach. Would I let it in for a small percentage? Yeah, probably, just to grab a few shares of it. And I would try and focus in on those lineups and actually get hands-on, and then make some decisions to try and get different any way I can with the bats. But it would really only be, 5 out of 150, if that. Similar kind of a thing with doing it without pitchers. I think there's more upside in doing that. You can get different with your lineup, and you're taking a big probability of the highest point totals out without playing either pitcher. But I think that lends itself to more of a likely game scenario where you've got both pitchers coming out after 5. The bats don't necessarily go off, but they put up enough that neither pitcher puts up a monster score, and then you can play it out with the bats. So I think that makes more sense as far as those two uncommon builds.
Yeah, I think the thing is, and I say this for pretty much any showdown sport, we're talking about large field tournaments, like in DKs, I think it's is it a $10 or $15? I can't, or no, it's a $20 tonight. Their big tournament. So it's 29.4 thousand entries. Anyways, large field, you're going to want to avoid dupes as much as possible. Like there's some lineups that are just really good that, might have a few extra dupes in there, projected dupes. And so you may not want to avoid those, but the ones that, have some of the top, like 4 or 5 of the top owned guys, plus one of the pitchers, like you're probably going to be duped with like 30 to 50, maybe even 100 other entries in that tournament, people that are just hitting optimize and uploading their crunch. So I would avoid kind of that. And that's why I don't like playing multiple pitchers in the same lineup. If I was playing 150, I'd probably have a few in there, but only having 20, I only have one pitcher in each lineup. So exactly one. And then I'm trying to get away from some of these Jock, Kiermaier, Yandy Diaz guys, but it's really difficult if you're playing even one of these guys. So if we talk about ownership projections, some of the highest owned guys, the 3 guys I mentioned, Diaz, Kiermaier, and Jock, and let's include Margot in there. He's over 35% projected ownership on DK. Who are some of your favorites there? Who are some guys you're avoiding on the other side?
So let's see. I'm just looking down some of the ownership. So some of the guys I'm avoiding, or some of the guys that I'm looking to get into?
Either way. So just because we're getting some ownership on guys that aren't the best hitters in the lineup, because we've got so few options. Everyone wants to jam in a pitcher, myself included. But who would be a guy you're maybe coming in overweight on or underweight on? Like, are you buying into Jock at 37% ownership? Are you buying into Yandy Diaz at even more ownership on DK?
Yeah, so the way I play, I'd be looking more into some of the paying up to be different with some of the high quality hitters at the top of the Dodgers lineup. You get a Corey Seager under 15% owned in the flex ownership. All my ownership numbers are going to be the flex ownership as I say them, by the way. Max Muncy, 16-ish percent, Turner, 18%. So getting to some of those guys rather than going dumpster diving with, and it's not dumpster diving in terms of quality as far as being a hitter. I really like Jock Peterson against a righty, but at 38% ownership, he's only 7,500, but you're going to be on him with everybody else. So I think it's very sensible to pay, pay the premium to be different. Get to a Mookie Betts at under 20% ownership. Yeah, he's 14-7, but you're going to be on Mookie Betts. He's one of the best players in the league. It makes a lot of sense to me. On the Rays side of things, it's not really the same story. From what I'm seeing, at least on DK, your lower owned hitters are more like a Joey Wendell, who I don't really love. Aros Arena is 9.3% owned over there. Big price tag on him. So I can maybe endorse that one a little bit, even though I haven't really been singing his praises a lot. That's a lot to pay for him, but you are buying into the ownership there. But the ownership is more spread onto the good hitters on the Rays side of things. So I think as far as finding differences, it would be about those high-priced, high-end Dodgers.
Yeah. Good question here in chat. Jeremiah says, Jeremiah, I know a familiar name in YouTube chat. So thanks for coming by once again. He says, with all the cheap plays pretty chalky. So the guys we were talking about, the Diaz, Margos, those type of guys, would a better build tonight be no starting pitcher and then just load up on the high dollar bats? So let's assume he's playing in like a single entry.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. If you really want to play it as one of these sides is going to go off, then you got to be able to get into some of those bats and you pick your side, right? And in this case, it would probably be the Dodgers. That's where the lack of ownership tends to be. So you're riding the better offense, you're riding the better implied team total against. It's tough to say the worst of the two pitchers, but Kershaw is the better of the two pitchers. So you're buying into the right side of the game. It's just what you have to pay up for. So I'd prefer it if you could make it work with Kershaw, but I don't think you can. So maybe you think about a Dodgers reliever or a Dodgers long man in addition to those guys, if you wanted to go that route and pick in and drop in a pitcher. And, you're hoping to grab 2 innings and a few strikeouts. But then you're kind of threading a thin needle. So I would prefer to do it with the hitters, and then you're just playing that game of I hope Kershaw's only giving me 5 and not striking out every single one of the Rays that he sees, and then you play the Dodgers getting the glass now game. Okay,
all right. So kind of finishing talking about the actual game, are there any other matchups that your home run model might like? Terry during the regular season was doing his quick hits article with some home run picks, did really well with those. Is there anyone you want to single out? It could be anyone. I mean, we've only got 18 hitters to choose from. So if it's Mookie Betts is your number one guy, then say Mookie Betts. Like, we don't have to get that contrarian here. There's only so many options. But who are some guys you're really singling out?
So my number one guy on the entire board, who I wrote up this afternoon, who's getting ownership, is Hunter Renfroe. 10.72 in my model. There's only 2 guys over the magic 10, which is like the takes you from an average to a good chance, and they're barely over 10. Renfroe's 10.72. Cody Bellinger on the other side, 10.58. Those are my 2 most likely guys to hit a home run. I also wrote up Brandon Lowy, 9.25 in my model. Lefty-lefty matchup, strikes out a ton of the time against left-handed pitching. I mentioned it before. It's like 37%. I don't have it up in front of me, but he also gets a lot of power against lefties, which I found interesting. And I think that it could show here. The link isn't pulling up for me. I wrote it up this afternoon in or just a little while ago in the player props picks. Here it is. So I'll read off his splits real quick. Renfroe this season, since the start of 2019, 184 plate appearances against lefties. He's got a 344 ISO and a team leading 16 home runs over that sample. 62.8% of his 97 career home runs have come against lefties. So he's my pick there as far as maybe a little bit off the board guy to pick for a home run. It's more of a prop bet situation because 27.4% ownership is not exactly sneaky on DK. But if you're looking for a good prop bet, I kind of like that one.
Nice. Yeah, I like the Renfroe call as well. I've been looking to just get more exposures to the top bats, and I would consider him a top bat in this game just based on how well he hits lefties. So I'm trying to jam in Muncy and Mookie Betts. Like, you can get Max Muncy, who's the Josh Engelman nemesis over these last couple of years. You can get Muncy at under 1% projected ownership in the captain spot, which is kind of crazy. Like, this is one of the best hitters in the game, in this game especially, but he's been one of the better hitters in the entire league over the last few years. Batting cleanup against a righty that does give up some power in Glass now. I don't know. I really like that, but I'm just having trouble getting to builds that project even like in the range of a lineup that I would want to play. And so that's the problem. Like, I'm trying to loosen my constraints and kind of play some of these worst projected lineups, but I only got to one Muncy captain out of my 20 lineups. I did get to a couple Mookie Betts. And again, I basically left out pitchers in the captain spot. I wouldn't recommend doing this. This is a pretty aggressive play. The pitchers are popular in the captain spot for a reason. They're more projectable and they've got massive upside, and they don't need to hit 2 home runs, which is a really low probability outcome. They need to maybe have a 65 or 70th percentile outcome maybe to end up in the winning lineup at captain. So especially in a playoff game when runs typically don't get scored at as high of a rate. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not saying you guys should necessarily do that, but I only ended up with one Kershaw captain lineup. The rest, I just have one pitcher in the flex.
And that's a good way to get different pretty quickly. You're still getting the pitcher score in there. You're just not getting the multiplier on it. And then, like I said, you're looking to pick off a home run with that multiplier that's going to vault somebody like a Max Muncy. If he hits a 3-run shot, get the multiplier from the captain, and then the pitchers aren't putting up monster games, Muncy's going to vault out ahead of him, and you're going to be one of the 1% of all lineups that has him there. So those are the exact kind of plays when we were talking about the ownership for the showdown, where we delineate the captain ownership versus the flex ownership. Those are the exact kind of plays I like to look for. Any cleanup hitter, I really don't even care what the name on the back of the jersey is. Any cleanup hitter going 1% owned in the captain spot, I can definitely endorse. Whatever the price, whatever the name on the jersey is, I think that makes a ton of sense to look for plays like that and start your builds from there. Particularly if you're hand building 1, 2 lineups like that. You don't want to necessarily just play the safest possible thing, which would be Kershaw at captain, and then throw in a lineup that's going to tie with a bunch of people. You're looking to be different. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Somebody in Slack asked, just real quick, since it's something that needs to be addressed, for DK in Fantasy Cruncher, if you guys aren't seeing relievers in your pool, just upload projections for them. If you put manual projections into the upload projections tool, those guys will appear. So upload the projections and reload the page. Those relief pitchers will pop in.
Yep, I was going to say reloading the page, you have to do that. So that's the important last step, and those guys should show up. You're going to have to go and check them into your player pool, but they should show up there kind of grayed out, and then you just got to uncheck them. Let's talk about relievers. I mean, we've got a few projected. We got a few projected for some ownership. Again, ownership projections are free, guys, if you haven't checked that out. The only thing we ask for in return is that you subscribe to the channel and maybe drop a like in there as well. But subscribes are the most important thing. But ownership projections are free. So we've got 4 guys in there right now. Jansen, Blake Treinen, Nick Anderson, and Pete Fairbanks. Do you have a favorite of those guys? They're all projected fairly close. We don't necessarily know who's going to get in the game. But is there one guy you got your eye on?
Those guys, that's pretty much a mixed bag. I mean, you're really throwing darts. Jansen, I think, will probably get in the game if the Dodgers are leading, and he's probably only going to give you 1 inning. Treinen might get in the game regardless of the game flow for the Dodgers. If it's close, if they're within a couple of runs, and might give you 2 innings. On the other side of things, Anderson could give you length. He's a guy they like to go to in that role. Same with Fairbanks. So if I was to do it, I think you might be more likely to pick off length with the Rays side of things than the Dodgers side of things, unless it's a situation where Kershaw comes out in the 4th, early in the 5th, and they turn to like a Joe Kelly, who's a starter / reliever who could give you 4 or 5 innings, in which case it's very tough to just throw a dart on that. So I think the most likely scenario is like a Nick Anderson giving you 2, a Fairbanks giving you an inning and a third, and an inning and 2/3. I would throw Diego Castillo into that mix. They like to go to him. He's a very high-end strikeout arm. So I would definitely have him projected in there as well, kind of similarly to what Alex has for Anderson and Fairbanks. The other guys in that pen I don't find quite as necessary, like Josh Fleming. We saw him get innings the other day, but he'd be a later guy to turn to. They really want to stay with those very high-end arms. So those would be the 3 guys out of that pen. And then, I think the 2 that Alex nailed on the Dodgers side of things would be the right 2 over there.
Yeah. All right. The guy I got to the most was, let's see. Jansen. I got to 20% of him, and then I got to 1 share out of 20 of Blake Treinen. So, who knows if these guys are actually going to pitch, but you got to take some stabs, I think, at these guys. It could potentially be a big edge. Probably some of them go under-owned. If you think Kershaw's going to get rocked, maybe go with the middle reliever. If you think he just is never going to pitch a good game in the playoffs or in the series, then there you go. But yeah, just think about game flow. I think the reason I'm getting to Jansen a little bit is because I do think Kershaw is going to pitch well. And I think if he does pitch well, then you've got a pretty high chance that Jansen gets into the game late for the cleanup duties. So that's my thought process. You got to be comfortable taking a 0 if you are playing one of these relievers, because anything could happen. All right, guys. Yeah, I see you dropping questions, 1v1s. We're not going to focus on those too much, I think, on a 1-game slate. 1v1s are pretty meaningless. I would use the ownership projections to make those calls. If you're talking about a cash game, I would maybe go with the guy that's higher owned. If you're talking about a tournament, last guy in type of situation, maybe play the lower owned guy unless you have a really low owned lineup elsewhere. So drop your questions in, drop your Bachelorette takes. I know there's also game 1 of the World Series going on. So good night to have 2 TVs. Are you a Bachelorette fan, Terry?
I am, we'll call it like a sarcastic viewer who goes along, probably knows too much about what's actually going along. But, I watch it sarcastically with a lady friend and send text messages about making jokes.
Nothing wrong with that. Alex Baker, who's pretty good at DFS, once said that the only reason he watches it is because his girlfriend makes him. So a little skeptical of that based on his knowledge of the Bachelorette series. But there you go. You're in pretty good company watching that type of show. 600 of you almost in here. Probably a good time for me to tell you guys to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner of your page. Again, No House Advantage is the sponsor of the show. One of the props that I like is Kershaw over 5.5 strikeouts at Odd Shopper. We've got that at 6.5. So go check out No House Advantage. Let's see how quickly this thing filled up since I brought some attention to it. Someone was saying, wow, okay, it's over 50% filled, but still only 55%. What are we, 20? No, not even 15 or so minutes away from lock. So I think we're going to get some pretty good overlay in that, but feel free to go try and fill that up. Use promo code Awesemo to get up to $20 of free play when you deposit on No House Advantage.
Overlay in a spot we've got a play that we really like. You don't get much better than that.
Pretty good stuff. Have you looked at the new series? I don't know if it's brand new, but it's pretty new. I know they had it for NHL, but the game on DraftKings. So there's obviously the Showdown slate, and then there's the 7-game series slate. Have you put any time into thinking about that, or do you have any takes on that? I know a couple people were asking about that in chat as well.
I had not seen that, but I'll let me take a look.
So essentially, you're basically just playing a Showdown, but it's for the duration of the series. So I saw this for NHL. I put in a couple lines. There was no optimizer for it, so I was basically just throwing in hand-built entries. And what I was building for, and what you guys could do if you're unsure, is to just kind of stack one side. So I think a really good option For captain would be a pitcher that's going to pitch 2 to 3 times through the series, so Kershaw or Glasnow, and then just fill it in with bats after that. So that's what I would do. I mean, there's probably a lot more theory that goes into it, or a reliever that you think could be in 3 to 4 times. But yeah, I would mostly focus on hitters and then do a starting pitcher at captain and do a 5-1 stack or something like that. And just hope that it's a quick series one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely, I would want one of those pitchers who's going to go at least twice. I mean, to play something like that, you've got to basically game plan it as if the series is going 6 or 7, and look for one of those guys. And then, yeah, maybe zero in on a closer like a Kenley Jansen, or zero in on a guy who is reliably going to get significant innings out of the bullpen, like a Nick Anderson, a Diego Castillo, or maybe a Pete Fairbanks, to pick off a reliever out of there. And then as far as bats go, from the same token, thinking that we're going to see some of these pitchers twice, the Kershaw-Glasnow matchup specifically, I would kind of maybe lean into what we're seeing tonight as far as the lineups, the matchups, and utilize these, thinking that we're going to get this game at least again. So you're going to have this game a second time, and then kind of unpredictable. I think the Dodgers are going with a bullpen game tomorrow, so it's going to be more difficult to play the matchups game tomorrow, whereas you're going to get a repeat of this slate unless somebody sweeps. So I think that would be kind of how I would treat the bats, is just look at the full series as if today is the full series and stack that way. Just a thought.
No, I'm sure there's a ton of different strategies. I thought there was a pretty good sized contest, and it looks like it got filled up.
Yeah, I didn't see anything big. It must have filled. On the Rays side of things, with the way they like to mix and match on platoons, which somebody else asked on that, guys, that just means, the handedness, lefty versus righty, righty versus lefty, et cetera, et cetera. The Rays like to mix and match a lot more. The Dodgers do it a little bit, but maybe if you're not looking into the bats that are all playing today, grab some of those Rays who are going to be off the board for people who aren't really paying attention to matchups in, game 2. Yoshi Tsutsugo, who's not in the lineup today, and Austin Meadows not in the lineup. I think he's healthy. Look for those guys who are not in the lineup today, but are likely to get at bats in other games, maybe for one of those 7 gamers.
We got a super chat here that just rolled in, Justin Frost. And all he says is go Dodgers. So no questions, just go Dodgers.
Find that.
Yeah. I mean, who do you want to win? Just for whatever reason, who do you like in this series?
I'm going with the Dodgers. Got to go NL team over the AL team, division rival California over Florida.
Fair enough. Yeah. So I'm rooting for Kershaw pretty hard. I'm sick of this narrative. This is he's one of the best pitchers of all time. So I think he needs to get a ring and just pitch not poorly. And honestly, he hasn't had a lot of help from his team in some of these games that have boosted his ERA or whatever stats these ridiculous people are touting to say that he's a bad postseason pitcher. So I hope Kershaw pitches very well. I hope he's dominant in this game for my lineups. Got a bunch of him, but that's who I'm rooting for. I'll probably just log off Twitter if he has a bad start tonight and bring him back in game 4. Let's see if we got any other good comments here in YouTube chat. People are asking for FanDuel MVP picks. Do you have someone that you really love over there? Would you stick to the pitchers? Or I'm sorry, the pitchers don't matter on FanDuel, do they?
No pitchers over there. Let me see if I can get to the ownership quick enough.
Yeah, ownership is free, guys. So if you want to check out and maybe get a loaned MVP's player over there, go check those out right now. I'll link them in chat once again.
What a guy. Let's see. I don't mind Brandon Lowy, who I mentioned before, is a decent chance to hit a home run, only drawing 6.2% ownership in the MVP spot on FanDuel, so that's not too bad. A lot of the Rays really are not drawing a ton as far as the bats go. And then, really the focus is on Mookie tremendously in the MVP spot. So anybody other than him and maybe Bellinger, who I love both those bats. Don't get me wrong, but anybody other than those two is going to be at least somewhat offbeat. And playing like a Brandon Lowy is definitely an offbeat way to go. Jock Peterson, 1.6% owned. You mentioned him earlier. Really like that. I imagine Muncy's 8.6, so a little higher than he was on DK where you mentioned him. But he's another one. So there's definitely some good plays in there. And then I realized before when I was reading off the thing out of my column, I accidentally read the Renfroe part. So just to clean that up real quick, for his career, Lowy against lefty pitching has a 250, 315, 527 slash with a 277 ISO compared to a 266, 355 on 9 with a 243 against ISO against righties. And he's hit a home run in 7.4% of his plate appearances against lefties compared to 4.6% of the time against righties. So he hits lefties for power. That was the point I was trying to make earlier when I accidentally read the Renfroe part.
Are relief pitchers really important on Showdown? Serious question. Yeah, that is a serious question. I don't know that they're really important. I think you can make a lot of quality lineups without relievers on DraftKings. Of course, we're talking about, but I wouldn't just say like no reliever is going to be in the winning lineup. So I was looking through lineup study. And I noticed Alex has been playing some of these, so that's usually a good place to start in lineup study. You look at the number one DFS player in the world's lineups, and I did notice he was mixing and matching some relievers, and that's why they're projected for tonight. Guys that have a pretty decent chance of getting in the game. So anyone that's in the ownership projections, I think, is someone that's obviously in play. So I would just use those. They're free today. And those would be the guys to choose from if you need a little bit of salary relief. And I think Alex tweeted about one of the relievers. I can't remember if it was Jansen or what, but just saying that on DraftKings, one of these relievers was cheaper than pretty much every other hitter on the slate. So nice way to differentiate, going to be a fraction of the ownership of the hitters in his range. And if he gets an inning, strikes out a couple guys and has a clean inning there, that's a guy who could end up in the winning lineup in your Dodgers onslaught. So
I'm curious about the inflection with which that question was written. Are they asking? I'm curious about the inflection that they put in that question, and there's no way to tell from typing it, but I'm wondering if they were asking like, are they really important? Like, wow, I didn't know that. Or are they asking like, are they really important? Like, are they extremely important?
Yeah.
My answer is different for both of those. Yes, they are actually important, but I don't know that they're extremely important.
Right. So, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. No points for saves on DK. EMAC points out. Yeah. So you got to get in the game. You got to get a couple strikeouts or have 2 clean innings or something like that to probably be a factor here, because guys are going to get hits. I know we've got studs on the mound, but they're probably not both going to throw complete games here.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying I like the Rays side of that a little bit. They're more likely to give you a couple guys who are going to throw, more than 1 inning. I can't even guarantee 2 innings, but, an inning and a third, see 4 hitters strike out 3 of them from Anderson. That might get you there. Mm-hmm. Same thing with like a Castillo. See, an inning and 2/3 strike out 3 hitters. So, that's the kind of thing that you're looking for with those relievers. So it's a crapshoot.
Jackson asks, favorite value bats on FanDuel. I would always be careful with the value guys. Value gets overrated a lot in MLB DFS just because it's an event-based sport. I mean, one at bat can make you, one at bat can reach value. It's not like NBA where there's a ton of opportunities to reach value. So just kind of a general note on that, but looks like some of the favorite values by the field are Chris Taylor on FanDuel at 32% ownership, Jock, Yandy Diaz, some of the same guys on DraftKings. But I'm just marveling at the MVP ownership compared to the captain ownership. When you take out pitchers, it is a completely different game. Mookie getting a bunch of ownership in the captain / MVP spot on FanDuel, and then getting essentially nothing over on DraftKings. So it is just a wildly, wildly different game from site to site. So know the rules of the game you're playing, know the ownership. Ownership's going to be super important. Anything else you do to avoid dupes if you're playing these large field tournaments, Terry?
Everything gets taken. process on my end through filtering. If I'm playing a full 150, I would put it into Excel, and I've got different filters that would sort it for ownership based off of the overall ownership product across the entire slate, and get me to hopefully unique lineups as far as an entry concern. So that's pretty much, if you're doing it by hand, say you're building 20 by hand, it would really be all about using that ownership tool and just making a few changes. If you're on something you feel is super chalky, grab one spot and do something different with it, and just try and get away from whatever that. It sounds super obvious, but it's, think, all right, this is where my finger is naturally going to click. Don't click on that guy. Go down 2 spots and click on the guy, obviously using the tools, but click on another likely hitter who's drawing less of the public eye. That's just a really basic, easy approach to doing that. But do everything the same way as everybody else is, and then make one decision different.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You only need to be different at 1, maybe 2 spots. Because 1 spot in 6 is 16, almost 17% of your lineup. So that'd be like about 2 spots on like an NFL slate or something where you're rostering 10 guys. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to go ridiculous. You don't have to leave, $5K on the table. You could and make decent lineups, but I wouldn't be doing that too often. Be comfortable leaving on a little bit of salary. And as it is with a lot of these showdowns, you're probably like the winning lineup's probably not going to look great before the slate starts. So just get a little weird in 1 or 2 spots. And that's really all you can ask for. Use the ownership projections on the site. Subscribe to us again. There's still 450 of you in here getting ready to watch this game. We appreciate you guys stopping by. Check us out on podcast if you can not catch us live on some of these strategy shows. Got different channels for each and every sport, as well as a channel that has everything. Just Awesemo Daily Fantasy on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Castbox, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. We are probably there. And shout out to Noah House Advantage. Thank you for sponsoring the show. Let's see where they're at in terms of filling this. 156 out of 220. That's only 71%. Get a few entries in there if you guys haven't done that. And then one last thing I forgot to mention. Let me go to the Awesemo Twitter account and Instagram account. If you guys haven't done this, go to Awesemo's Twitter, and we have a giveaway going on for Game 1 of the World Series. It locks in just a couple minutes. All you have to do is guess the Dodgers run total. Same thing on Instagram. You can win a Platinum Monthly Pass on Instagram. You can win a MLB Yearly Pass on Twitter. So go check those out. I will link this in chat momentarily. Anything else you want to mention before we head out, Terry?
I just want to know how many submissions we're going to get with decimal run totals in them.
Just the Vegas implied total.
6.2, yeah, exactly. 4.1.
Yeah. I'm sure we will get a couple of those, but go participate in those. It's literally free to enter. You just have to follow the directions, and you can win free stuff. So thanks for joining, everybody. And Terry and I will be back tomorrow for Game 2. Good luck.